The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Tennessee on Thursday night to take on the Titans. Pittsburgh currently installed as a 5.5-point favorite in this game on BETDAQ, 42.5 the total. And boy, is there a more disappointing team in the NFL than the Tennessee Titans? I'm not sure there is. Maybe New Orleans, maybe Detroit, maybe Kansas City, but Tennessee is certainly right up there with all those teams. This team was 9-7 last year. A lot of people, their fans especially, expected them to challenge Houston in the AFC South this year. Clearly, that's not going to happen. Looks like they're going to challenge Jacksonville for the worst team in the AFC South. Tennessee, there really is no bright spot when you look at this team. 1-4. Most of their 4 losses have been blowouts, including last week in Minnesota. They're 26th in the league in total offense, 29th in the league in total defense. They cannot score, cannot stop teams from scoring, and I'm not sure how they're going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers this Thursday night. Now, I was on Tennessee last week. Mistakenly, I was on Tennessee on the road as a 6-point underdog in Minnesota. The main reason was because I felt like finally the right quarterback was starting. Tennessee started this year with Jake Locker as their starting quarterback. Locker, of course, was picked in the first round last year. And this is a guy who's raw, very raw and green, has some athletic ability, but just does not throw the ball right now as well as Matt Hasselbeck, who was the quarterback of the Titans last year, was really their best offensive player, led them to those 9 wins in the regular season. So I thought it was a mistake to put Locker in there. I realize that's the way things are done in the NFL nowadays. You draft a guy in the first round of the draft, and you aren't often going to let him sit any longer than a year, which is how long Locker sat. There are exceptions. We saw Phillip Rivers sit for a couple of years in San Diego. Aaron Rodgers sit for a while in Green Bay. We know how those situations worked out. Yet most general managers seem unwilling to follow the Phillip Rivers, Aaron Rodgers model. They want to rush these young guys out there as soon as they feel like they're ready. And most of these young guys evidently are not ready. Jake Locker, I feel like, fits the profile of a guy who's not quite ready. But if Matt Hasselbeck's performance last week in Minnesota is any indication, I recognize he's without Kenny Britt, his best wide receiver. Still, that was a bad performance he put on up there. So it looks like now, hey, maybe Locker was the man for the job. Maybe I was the one who was wrong. After all, I haven't been at practices every day seeing these two guys. Locker didn't look any worse than Hasselbeck looked last week in Minnesota. Hasselbeck will be going again this Thursday against the Steelers defense that, hey, historically very tough. And again, so far through 4 games, remember the Steelers have only played 4 games. They've already had their bye. 5th in the league in total defense. So statistically at least, this Pittsburgh defense appears to be the same unit or approximately the same unit they have been over the past few seasons. Of course, last year they finished ranked number 1 in the league in total defense. But I think when you look a little closer, we've seen a different story. This Pittsburgh defense does not appear to be quite as good as they have been in the past. Of course, an absolute meltdown in Week 3 out in Oakland. They allowed the Oakland Raiders, who have been horrible in every other game, they allowed the Oakland Raiders to beat them and to shred that defense in the process. Carson Palmer looked like vintage Carson Palmer in that game. Now, they were without Polamalu and James Harrison. Both those guys came back last week against Philadelphia. Polamalu promptly hurt his calf. He's out again, will miss this game. James Harrison expected to play. And that defense responded against Philadelphia as we expected him to. You expected that defense after getting shredded by the Oakland Raiders, after having a bye to sort of regroup, after getting a couple of their best players back from injury. You expected them to play much better against Philadelphia, and they certainly did, limiting that high-powered Eagles offense to 14 points. However, when it really mattered in the fourth quarter, the Philadelphia, Pittsburgh was protecting a 6-point lead. Philadelphia drove right down the field on that defense, scored a touchdown with less than 5 minutes left, put Pittsburgh in a tough spot, really. Steelers had to go down. Ben Roethlisberger led the team down for a game-winning field goal. So still, that defense is very unusual to see them collapse in an important time last week. We'll see how they do this week against Tennessee. The over-under in this game, 42.5, that is kind of low. I do expect to see some scoring in this game, maybe a little more scoring than 42.5. Remember, in Tennessee's 1 win against the Detroit Lions, I recognize Detroit is no Pittsburgh on defense. They were able to score 44 points at home. So this Titans offense, and I know it was terrible last week against Minnesota. I know Chris Johnson, their running back, has been bad for the last couple of years. Mentioned Hasselbeck, how poorly he played last week. Still, the Titans, if there is a bright spot, again, Tennessee's 26th in total offense, 29th in total defense, so you can safely say the offense is the strength of this team. Now, I don't expect that defense to have any success slowing down the Pittsburgh offense, which has really quietly developed into one of the best offenses in the league over the last couple of years. They're a Ben Roethlisberger-centric group. They pass to set up the run. Roethlisberger, an elite quarterback. I think anybody who is not fully on the Roethlisberger bandwagon, even after he won his his last Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Anybody who still thought that maybe the defense was the reason this team was able to get by and win so many games, over the last couple of years, you have been proven wrong. Ben Roethlisberger, as good of a quarterback as there is in the league. Now, it's a different style. He doesn't look like Tom Brady or Drew Brees, but he does things that those guys can't do. Have you ever seen anybody as good at shrugging off defenders, buying time, then throwing the ball down the field? You ever seen anybody as good as that as Ben Roethlisberger? I haven't, and I expect to see plenty of that this Thursday night. Now, Tennessee in their 2 home games have given up 75 points. So again, you see a total like 42.5 here, and you think, that might be a little low for a defense that once again has given up 75 points in 2 home games, and an offense in Pittsburgh that does not mind at all throwing the ball down the field. The only thing the only reason I'm hesitating a little bit here to jump on over 42.5 here is because I worry about the Tennessee offense and whether they're going to be able to score on this Pittsburgh defense. Mentioned they hung 44 on Detroit in their only win, a home game a few weeks ago, but Pittsburgh is no Detroit. The Steelers defense, even without Troy Polamalu, again, they played much better last week against Philadelphia. This game has the feel of a blowout if Pittsburgh is the type of team we think they are. And, I hesitate here because I bet on Pittsburgh last week, lost on them, was laying 3.5 points in that game against Philadelphia. Was extremely disappointed to see their defense collapse in the fourth quarter. Bet against Pittsburgh successfully in their previous game, week 3 against Oakland when they lost. So this Steelers team, not quite as good as they have been over the last couple of years. And coming into the season, I wasn't one of those people who thought that. You might remember I was betting on the Steelers week 1 when they played the Denver Broncos. And part of my argument there was a lot of people at the end of last season after the Steelers collapsed in their playoff game, allowed Tim Tebow to throw for 300-plus yards and leading the Denver Broncos to that playoff win. A lot of people after that game blamed the Steelers, and most of it, I think, is because people hesitated to give Tebow credit. There was so much negativity about the guy last season and this season. People didn't want to say, wow, this was a historically great performance against the number 1 defense in the league in the postseason. Instead, they said, well, Pittsburgh's old, Pittsburgh's injured, Dick LeBeau must have forgotten how to coach defense because he coached a horrible game. I thought that was really, I thought that Pittsburgh was going to come out this season and show those critics that was not the case. But week 1 against Denver, that defense did not look like the Pittsburgh defense of the past. Already talked about that Oakland Raiders game. And last week, even though they had a lot of success against Philadelphia throughout the game, again, they let the Eagles march right down the field for a touchdown that could have won the game for them at the end. So, I don't know. I think this Pittsburgh team, I might still be falling into the trap of, Pittsburgh, we know what a great team Pittsburgh is. We know what a great team they've been under Mike Tomlin. And are they still that same team? I'm not sure. Now, even if they're not still the same team, they still should be able to cover 5.5 against the Tennessee Titans, right? I mean, Pittsburgh should be plenty motivated for this game. It's a national TV game. They're 2-2 in the division. Baltimore is off and running at 4-1. They don't want to start, falling 2 or maybe 3 games behind Baltimore. Obviously, this week they couldn't fall any more than 2 games behind. They don't want to start, digging themselves a hole in the division. Certainly, I expect Pittsburgh to put their best foot forward in this game. Will it be enough? You obviously expect it to be enough. Tennessee has been an absolute weak sister, as we've mentioned. However, could Tennessee be the wounded animal, the dangerous home dog in this spot? Everybody counting them out. National TV opportunity in front of your home crowd. Maybe your last opportunity before people entirely write off the season. Maybe your last opportunity to show the football watching world and show your home crowd that you're not as bad as you looked through the first 5 weeks. So, I don't know, remains to be seen. We'll make a call on this game over the next day or so. As of now, I certainly lean towards Pittsburgh. Tough not to lean towards Pittsburgh, but if these first 5 weeks of the NFL season have taught us anything, it's beware of that home underdog that's everybody's counting out. So 42.5, over 42.5, I think at this point looks like the best bet in this game. But as I said, we'll get more into this game over the next 24 hours. We will release, I guess this will be our preview on this game, but via Twitter. If you're not following us on Twitter, what are you waiting on? At BETDAQ NFL, we're a relatively new Twitter account. We've only been up and running for 3 weeks, but we are an active Twitter account, and we'll be sure in the hours leading up to this game, I'll make some final decisions. I'll stop being so wishy-washy. So, hey, you can ride me or you can go against me. I know plenty of you out there probably think I'm an idiot, and you're waiting to hear my final decision so you can say, oh, fade that guy's advice. Well, whatever you think of me, good or bad, I will put some final decisions out there in the hours leading up to this game. Right now, I lean towards Pittsburgh -5.5 and the over.